welcome to Del Norte County Board of Supervisors meeting, August 27th. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Kylie, can you please take the roll?
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Here.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Here.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Here.
Chair Cowan?
Here. At this time, we're going to take a moment of reflection. Supervisor Hemmingson, could you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Absolutely. Please begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, I'll take introductions of new employees to the Board of the Supervisors. Do we have any new employees? Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning. So as you can see by my fancy hat, I'm here to introduce you to a new addition to the Del Norte County Sheriff's Office. And with that, I'd like to call Stephen Fulkenstrom and his wife Jessica up. A little bit about Steve. I had the opportunity to get to know him through his application process, and I think that he has a great story. And although I can't share all of it, I'll share a little bit of it. He pursued a career in law enforcement several years ago and achieved that career and did well. And for personal reasons outside of his control, he had to make the tough decision to temporarily step away from that career. And I've seen that happen a lot, and people don't often find their way back. They get sort of locked into life and a different job and family. And what I find most interesting about Steve's character is that he maintained the desire to find his way back into law enforcement, and he pursued all the proper needed certifications for that. We were excited to hire him, and we were excited to add him to our team. I know he's going to do a great job. He's been on a little while already, but I think it's important that we introduce our community to him and let them witness the oath of office. So at the end of that, his wife Jessica will be pinning his badge on him. To that end, please raise your right hand, repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Steve Falkenstrom,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well
and that I will well
and faithfully discharge
and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Deputy Sheriff Coroner, congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Go ahead, Jessica. Quick and painless. The board have any questions?
Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good
Morning, Board. So very pleased to announce the Department of Child Support Services has hired Amber O'Loughlin to join our ranks. This is really important for us because Amber is the first hire we've had since July of 2017. And so it's a big deal for us to be able to have someone join our program. Amber is a longtime native of our area, grew up here, and she has a long history of working with children and families within her background. So we are very excited to have her join our team. Do you have anything you'd like?
Welcome.
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to work for child support, and I'm excited for this new experience.
Okay.
Great.
you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Board. I'm very happy to introduce to you John Cowan as our new manager for the Behavioral Health Branch. John has his PhD in psychology and comes to us with over 20 years of experience, not just in behavioral health, but in also public health and child welfare. And he's a great asset to our team. Very happy to have him.
Welcome. Do you want to say a few words?
Thank you and good morning.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other new employees? Okay, is there any reportable action from closed session, council?
Yes, with a motion by Supervisor Hemmingson, second by Supervisor Howard, and a 5-0 vote, the board voted to initiate an action of which, once formally commenced, shall be disclosed to any person upon inquiry. Also, the board voted with a motion by Supervisor Gitlin, a second by Supervisor Cowan, and a 5-0 vote to waive any potential conflict on behalf of the county, allowing Karen Olson to represent PW in the case of conservatorship of PW, and authorize county council to sign on behalf of the county.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to request any deletions, corrections, or additions from the board members to this agenda. In order to add an item to the agenda, the matter must have come to the attention of the county subsequent to the posting of the agenda, and the matter requires action before the next regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. Is there anything, gentlemen? Nothing. Seeing none, we'll go on to reports from the board. Supervisor Berkowitz, you want to start us off?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I decided to take a long overdue working vacation to several cities in Alaska this last couple of weeks and to visit the Victoria, British Columbia. I wanted to find out how other areas handled their homeless problem. It turns out that Victoria has the most aggressive way of dealing with over 1,500 homeless. Millions of dollars have been spent in dealing with creative support housing units, and over 300 units of supportive housing have been created and more are underway. This is out of a population, excuse me, of 86,000. According to several government analysts, unfortunately, the problem continues to get worse despite the creation of more and more units. Yesterday, I attended the Redwood Coast Transit meeting along with Supervisor Gitlin. We adopted several resolutions dealing with funding for replacement of the dial-a-ride buses and other funding issues. We also had a discussion concerning staff wages and approved a purchase order for new transportation software. We also voted to let veterans and students ride the buses free of charge. And that's my report, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Howard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Attended the 100-year anniversary of Rumiana Creamery last week. It was exciting to know that there's been a business around that long here in our community. Congratulations to those, Baird and Joby, for keeping up the great work and making our community known and well-placed on the map for Del Norte County. Attended a Smith River Resource Conservation District meeting where we had a great deal of discussion around Roosevelt elk and potentially proceeding on with stakeholder group meetings that will hopefully, the board will continue to help facilitate some of those discussions here in the future. Had quite a few discussions with Matt Brady over the last couple of weeks, specific to accidents on Highway 101 and Highway 199. Most recently, on Highway 101 at Elk Valley Crossroad yesterday around noon. Haven't heard the results of that one yet, but obviously it was a full vehicle extraction with the roof coming off that vehicle. Thank you, Sheriff, for your deputies being in response with CHB out there to help control traffic. Hoping those folks are all right. We do need to continue to address these areas, and I know the Del Norte Local Transportation Commission is actively working on a corridor plan for that that stretch from Lake Earl Drive all the way through to Parkway. We need to continue pursuing that because these are dangerous intersections here in our community, and when the tourist season gets as thick as it does, things happen, and we've seen a lot of that in the last couple months. Attended a First Five board meeting, and then in addition, the celebration sponsored by the Yurok tribe of the acquisition of Blue Creek. It was great to see lots of representatives there from Senator McGuire's office and Congressman Huffman's office in celebration of this acquisition, representatives from Green Diamond and also Western Rivers Conservancy that helped to get this 10-year process fruition for the tribe. They've got some stronger ambitions, as they've announced at the meeting, to acquire more properties within the area over the next several years, which will take, I think the number that was thrown out was in the billions to get this project done. I'm not sure how exactly they're going to be doing this, but they do want to continue to acquire land within their Aboriginal boundaries to add to the reservation properties. Met with Ted Ward and discussed with him some issues around potential locations as our study continues to unfold around a north transfer station that would be located somewhere in the Smith River area. We're working with the Tolowadini Nation to hopefully find a site that works for everybody in our community. Also addressed some continued concerns around Wonder Stump Road, and glad to hear things are going to be transparent and workable for the public when we eventually do come to some agreement with working with that community around Wonder Stump Road to come to some logical conclusions so the roads department and the community could agree on a good solution. Had some discussions with constituents, in addition discussions with county council's office and community development about some current holes as is developed under our current cannabis retail ordinance. It's been identified by the board after potentially having a year of the ordinance in place that there could be shortcomings to what we put in place. And both community development and county council's office has recognized some of these shortcomings, along with members of the public that have hoped to establish businesses within our area but are currently restricted by some shortcomings of our zoning through our ordinance. I've brought this discussion to the attention of Supervisor Cowan with the hopes that we could have a transparent discussion here in front of the board here in the coming weeks. Had some very long discussions with David Pickard from NBC, who's preparing for his trip here to Del Norte County to film our side of the story from about September 9th through the 13th of this coming month. If you see camera crews rolling around the area and filming great scenery here in Del Norte County and interviewing various folks, it's for the Olympics for next year. Things are well underway, and then they'll also return to this community in December when we have the Japanese delegation led by about 30 to 35 people here in Del Norte County. They'll be back for filming that reception where we're going to host, as Supervisor Cowan and various others here in the community are helping to form discussions around women's empowerment and inclusive practices with youth. Wanted to discuss briefly and thank Alan Winogravo to get some folks out there on the Klamath Glen boat ramp to get some brush out of the way that had fell into the path of boats that couldn't launch two next to each other, which kind of presented some congestion. He got folks out there right away, and it was great to see. And then also working very closely with Tamara Layton, Del Norte Local Transportation Commission, and ensuring smooth transition for meetings for the California Transportation Commission here and their town hall on November's 5th and 6th. It's going to be a great discussion. I know Senator McGuire is going to be here also for that town hall meeting and probably plans on having additional discussions with the community at that time. But it's great to have those folks that control the dollars and the flow of those dollars here into this community, along with the other 57 counties in the state of California, to have them here on site to see what we're doing great things with our STIP dollars, but in addition, great things on our state highway system, and hope to do those things like Highway 197, 199, and Highway 101 at last chance grade to get those done in short order. And that's my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Gitlin?
Thank you. I'll try not to be too repetitive since some of my colleagues have already gone over some of the things we also attended, but I too attended the Yurok Tribe Western Rivers Conservancy and Green Diamond Resource Event, which celebrates the return of Blue Creek to the Yurok and the permanent preservation of this irreplaceable stream. And for those of you who are not exactly familiar with what is Blue Creek, it is the cold water lifeline of the Klamath River and the spiritual centerpiece of the Yurok ancestral homeland. And this particular event marked the transfer of 47,000 acres of land along Blue Creek, and this was in Delaware County, this actual event that took place. Last Wednesday, I met with senior Walmart management staff along with Heidi Kunstl, our CDD director, for an update of activity targeting the stabilization of this valuable asset to our community. I'm very happy to report that these efforts to reduce this alarming shoplifting rate and other assorted crimes is indeed working. And other measures which might seem a bit inconvenient to some of us who shop in the store, but are very valuable in curbing the problems that were associated with this wanton shoplifting problem, and measures will continue. The security will be retained for an indefinite period of time, and it's good news at Walmart. On a related note, our Take a Bite Out of Blight program will offer assistance to a private property owner, which is directly across the street from Walmart on Washington Boulevard. You may notice that there's a break in the fence, the 101 southbound off-ramp, and this we will attempt to address the terribly blighted condition of accumulated trash over many, many years. And we'll attempt to, weather permitting of course, we'll attempt to start that process beginning Wednesday. Volunteers are needed. We'll start a 2-day project Wednesday and Thursday. Wear your long pants, closed-end shoes. We'll have all the tools necessary for you to help us take a bite out of blight. I participated in the KFUG radio show yesterday, Sunday, discussing the addressing of the collateral damages of the folks who are without shelter and who situate themselves across various parts of the county. Redwood Coast Transit met, as Supervisor Berkowitz mentioned, and we did approve a series of resolutions in terms of operations. And most important is that veterans, and I think I want to underscore this, veterans will ride the bus free. It's not free, someone pays for it, but of course to the veteran who served his country, welcome aboard, and we'll be effectuating that program very shortly. And that is my report.
Thank you. Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you so much. Had an RCRC meeting, which is the Rural Counties of California, a meeting in Sacramento. We started off the meeting with I guess kind of a preview of harassment training, respect in the workplace. So that took about an hour of the meeting. It was very interesting. We approved and accepted Monterey County into our group. A couple of months ago, or a few months ago, we accepted Sonoma County. So this brings the total counties now up to 37 in the RCRC organization. And now we represent, and I think I've got these numbers right, they may not be exactly right, but we now represent 58% of the land mass in California, 12% of the population. So we've got a lot of things to overcome. Of course, our next meeting will be the annual conference in September, where we have our annual basket raffle, and Kylie always does an excellent job of taking care of that. So we're working on donations. Also, Assembly Bill 1783, the Agricultural Employee Housing Bill. We took a neutral position in that. There's a lot of issues with that bill, and the Farm Bureau does not like that bill, so they're opposing it. The RCRC's just taken a neutral position, leading into, I guess, the Farm Bureau dinner, which I attended. Had a meeting with staff on possible boat ramp improvements and access points. Had a conference call having to do with Dungeness crab gear modifications. I filled in for Chairman Cowan on agenda review. Went to a Smith River Collaborative meeting where we discussed the projects coming up Kanopke Creek north and south. I actually had a NORTEC meeting to go to, so I had to leave that meeting before I went on the field trip. And I haven't actually talked to anybody who was on the field trip. Taylor Carsley from the county went on that, so I can get information from him. I did go to the NORTEC meeting, which is the Northern Rural Training and Employment Consortium meeting in Chico, where because of CSAC meeting for our prior meeting conflicted, the governing board did not have quorum, so we had to do a lot of makeup stuff and approve some things that we didn't get taken care of. And on my way back, I stopped off at the RC&D meeting, which is the Rural Conservation and Development office in Weaverville, where we also house the 5-county Salmonid group, and Tony Reed, who used to work at our local newspaper, now works for that group. So anyway, stopped in to see them. I hadn't been to that office before, so stopped in to see them. And also had quite a few constituent calls having to do with railroad extension as well as winter stuff. And that's it for me.
Thank you. Well, I didn't have a whole lot. I was lucky enough and blessed enough to spend about 10 days with my whole family together. And as my children get older, that happens less and less. So before I left town, had a meeting with Tamara Layton and Daphne from our Daily Bread, going over the progress that's been made over there so far and updates on further plans, things going on you've heard me talk about. They've got the lockers in there now. Heather and her crew are in there twice a week doing mental health. They're able to do meals 5 days a week, and we're working on getting them open 24 hours. To become a 24-hour shelter. So a lot going on there. Had a meeting with Mayor Enscore to discuss homelessness and what's going on, as well as some other items. We had a Visitors Bureau meeting. I had a juvenile justice meeting before I left town. A lot of new members there and some transition, which is always good. Also had some phone calls while I was out of town with Ted regarding the transfer station that's being proposed in our northern county. I think it's something we've been working on for quite a while, and I think we're finally getting there, but working with Television Nation over that as well. Since I did thank you for taking care of agenda review so I could be with my family, but I had a brief meeting with Jay yesterday when I got back to go over everything, and that's it for me. So, we got the consent agenda in front of us, items 1 through 8.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the consent agenda. Any public comment on consent agenda items only, items 1 through 8? We're going to do the reading of that. Would you like to talk after that? Okay, do I have any other public comment on consent agenda items? Okay, Kylie, can you please pull the vote?
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Chair Cowan?
Yes. Supervisor Berkowitz, we had a proclamation. Could you please read that for us?
Thank you, Chairman. Whereas more people in the U.S. died by suicide than ever before, and whereas suicide is the second leading cause of death in California for 15 to 24-year-olds, and whereas 50% of mental illness occurs before the age of 14 and 75% before the age of 24. And whereas the stigma associated with mental illness and suicide works against suicide prevention by discouraging persons discouraging persons at risk from seeking life-saving help. And whereas by increasing awareness of suicide as a public health issue supports citizens to gain new knowledge of suicide and prevention. Now, therefore, the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors hereby proclaims September 2019 as Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. And be it resolved further that the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors encourages all citizens to learn the warning signs and the use of that information to ask a troubled friend, colleague, or family member, "Are you okay?" Passed and adopted this 24th day of August, 2019. And do we have a person to accept?
He'd like to present that to you.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
cherish this. For the record, I'm Gordon Clay from Brookings, Oregon. First, let me acknowledge Commissioners Berkowitz and Howard as donors to the publication and distribution of this 16-page magazine. I'll get to it. That will be in the September 7th issue of the triplicate and the pilot. Your participation is very much appreciated. September is Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month. Suicide in the U.S. is at an all-time high, and the per capita rate has gone up every single year since 2003. We also know that the whole Wild Rivers coast has difficulty keeping qualified behavioral health practitioners while suicide rates continue to climb. So what do? Sit around and hope someone else is going to solve the puzzle, or take some personal responsibility to become a lifesaver? 90% of people who kill themselves have demonstrated known warning signs, but no one ever picked up on them. What we need to do as individual citizens is learn the risk factors and warning signs and what to do when you're around a friend, neighbor, colleague, or family member who is showing those signs. And you can ask with confidence, "Are you okay?" And let them know that it's okay to say, "I'm not okay." That conversation could change their life, and it might change yours too. Other things you can do is help connect someone who is struggling to get professional care. Check in with a friend by phone or text message to see how they're doing, especially divorcing men. Invite a friend to meet for coffee or to share a meal together. Send a handwritten card to let someone know that you're thinking of them. Pick up one of these cards at one of the 38 locations that we have in Crescent City, 163 in the county, in Curry and Del Norte County. Share the National Suicide Prevention Line, 800-273-8255, and the crisis text line, especially for kids, 741-741. There's a myth that if you ask someone if they're thinking of suicide or even thinking of killing themselves, that it would increase the likelihood of that happening. Just the reverse happens. It brings relief, opens up discussion, reduces isolation, and shows that someone cares. Together we can change the conversation by countering myths and fear with information and action steps everyone can take. We all have a role to play in suicide prevention, not only during September, but all year long. This is a publication that will be in the pilot on the 7th. Be sure and get your copy and read it and sign up for a 1-hour course on the internet, QPR, because you'll learn so much, and I almost guarantee you within a week or two of taking that course, you will see a friend or a colleague or a family member that's exhibiting those signs. Commit to breaking the silence and talk about your own lived experience with suicide, and let's work together as a village and save lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We always appreciate seeing you. Okay, we're going to move on to our public comment period. Members of the public may address the board at this time on matters that are within our jurisdiction. If you're addressing the board regarding a matter listed on the agenda, you may be asked to hold your comments to 3 minutes so that everybody has a chance to speak. Is there any public comment at this time?
Eileen Cooper. I would just like to thank the Hope Village people for being here to make a presentation. We do desperately need a shelter in this community. We have to do this very quickly because our vital ecology, which supports endangered species, is at risk from homeless people damaging our natural resources and also our highly scenic resources. Until we have a good place for people who are in desperation, the cleanups will continue to find terrible garbage, terrible impacts to wetlands. We have big cleanups going on this coming week. I intend to participate. I hope everybody, just as a learning experience goes on that cleanups that are planned this week. It's a real eye-opener to what is at stake if we don't do something. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? No public comment. Okay. Well, we're not quite to our timed item at 10:35, so let's go ahead and take up some general government issues. For items, item number 12, approved Title III funding application as submitted by the Planning Division requesting $15,000 per year for 5 years to supplement the Planning Division budget for natural resource planning services provided by county staff as requested by the Director of Community Development. Jay, do you want to, I don't see Heidi, do you want to talk to this?
This item was brought up in the past in regards to some of the services that the Planning Division has been intimately involved in, everything from dam removal to Pacific Shores and different types of projects that have come up over the years. And this is a solution that Director Kunstler has brought forward and is hoping that this funding will assist in their budget for the next few years.
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on item 12. Do you have any public comment on item 12? Seeing none. Kylie, could you please pull the vote?
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Cowan?
Yes. Moving on to item 13, review and discuss the findings and recommendations in the draft 2018-19 final grand jury report applicable to Del Norte County and give direction to staff and to approve the response with any board approved amendments and direct the final document to be forwarded to the presiding judge.
So the grand jury report for this year was very limited in scope. It, as far as the board's requirements, you address personnel issues and budgetary issues for those departments that are under your watch, primarily those being from appointed departments. In this case, there was juvenile hall and a contractor that works for the Department of Health and Human Services, Remy Vista. In regards to juvenile hall, there were a couple of findings and recommendations that are outlined in the response. Relatively straightforward and easy to address. A little more difficult are the findings and response and recommendations for Remy Vista, which are going to require time for Health and Human Services to sit down with the contractor, assess those findings and recommendations, and then come back with any solutions.
Any questions for Jay, board? No?
I would move that we approve the response with no amendments.
Second that motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any public comment on item number 13? See none, Kylie?
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Cowan?
Yes. I'm going to go back over, and we have a time presentation at 10:35 with Jeff Marcel. Welcome. How are you today?
Doing very well.
Great. Good to
Good
see
morning.
you. Good morning.
Good to be here. I'll move this thing. All right. So as a way of introduction, I just want to remind you that last year, during my first month on the job, I came to the board and introduced myself. And during that introduction, I articulated a broad vision and a set of priorities for the Gaston Ranger District, Smith River NRA. And I'm sure you guys remember them all, have them totally memorized. In case you don't, I will remind you that my priorities are planning and implementing landscape scale restoration, implementing the NRA travel management plan, improving the recreational experience on the NRA, raising the profile of the NRA, and of course building and strengthening our partnerships. So I'm here to report out on the progress the district has made since the last time I met with you, and this is my way of making myself accountable to the board and ultimately to the citizens of Delaware County. So landscape scale restoration. The district, along with our partners, and we have many, are working very aggressively in this manner, and I'm here to give you some highlights of what we're working on and some successes we've had recently. In May 2019, which was just a few months ago, we signed the Konopka South decision. We went through a NEPA process, took a year, which authorized approximately 300 acres of commercial timber and 500 acres of hazardous fuels reduction. The 3.3 million board feet timber sale will be advertised in the next few weeks. Staff is working very, very hard on that as we speak to get that out for our last quarter because our fiscal year ends at the end of September. So, and it's also as part of a 5-year vegetation management plan. We're currently working on the North K and Rowdy Divide projects, both of which call for 300 to 500 acres of commercial thinning and 500 acres of hazardous fuels reduction for each project. The 3 million board feet Little Jones timber sale was sold last year and will be implemented in early 2020. The contractor's been in touch with us. The roadwork's getting done, and that logging operation should start here pretty soon once we get through the winter, probably late winter, early spring of next year. So here's where, well, let me back up for a second, excuse me, before I get to this other item. With support from our partners, and we've talked about this before, we have 2 hazardous fuels NIFWIF grants that are currently being implemented. One of them is being managed by Delaware County, thank you very much, and the other will be managed by the Tallawah-Dene Nation. And right now we're successfully implementing about 200 acres of the NIFWIF grant that the county is currently managing, and that work is getting done. We're making a lot of progress on that, so thanks for that. And the other grant, the implementation on that side should begin soon once the Tallawah finish up some of their accounting for that. So as I mentioned during the last time I was here, the state of California has committed $200 million per year for 5 years for a total of $1 billion for the California Climate Investment Grant Program. It's called the CCI program for short, for fuels reduction. Last winter, the district, with a lot of assistance from our partners, including Delaware County, the Collaborative, the Smith River Alliance, etc., successfully applied for a $5.7 million grant to complete hazardous fuels reduction around the communities of Gascue and Big Flat on over 3,300 acres. Unfortunately, we came up a little bit short on that grant. I mean, this short. The scoring on that is very, very complex, and it's not really worth my time to explain that to you, but trust that there's another round coming on in the fall, and the Collaborative, along with the district and our supporters up in the regional office, will be applying for that grant again for the second round. It'll be a very, very similar proposal. It'll be a better proposal, and we're fairly confident, but you never know, that we will be successful this second time. And this second time, we will not be competing with other high-profile projects that were on that last round, including Save the Redwoods League, State Parks, which is great, they got it, and the Yurok Tribe also received the grant through the same program. So we'll have less competition this time, and we think we'll have a better application. So I'll give you an update on that when we get to that, and that'll be in the fall. Biomass utilization. This spring, the district met with David Slagle from the Hamburg Group and we went out and visited the hardened timber sale to consider the potential of utilizing logging slash for biomass opportunities, including post and pole. We are planning another field trip when logging begins in the Little Jones timber sale that I just described, and David is very interested in going into an agreement with the logging contractor in order to utilize logging slash. Now, let me be really clear. There is still a big question around the economic viability of this. He's very interested. I think he'd like for it to work. We all would. We have a fuels problem on the district, but the cost of haul is very, very high. But he's thinking if he goes into a successful agreement with the logging contractor that perhaps we could be successful this time. So in summary, assuming we awarded the CAL FIRE grant, over the next 3 years, we are looking at hazardous fuels reduction on approximately 5,000 acres and commercial thinning restoration on an additional 1,000 acres. Together, we're looking at approximately 6,000 acres of vegetation management on the Gasquet Ranger District in the next couple of years. So, moving on to implementing Smith River travel management. Very excellent news on this front. We're making a lot of great progress, and I'll give you some of the highlights. In just the past week, NIFWIF officially awarded Delaware County a $300,000 plus grant to implement travel management in the North Fork Smith project area. And thank you, Delaware County, for taking this on. We were the original applicants, but it was decided that NIFWIF and the regional office for the Forest Service did not want us to be the applicant. So they asked the Smith River Collaborative to take it on. We worked it through the collaborative, and the county ultimately decided to take that on, and we are extremely grateful for that. The focus of the work will be to bring roads onto the system, especially our OHV trails, so we can have some good OHV access up in that area. And we're suggesting that we have an MOU between the U.S. Forest Service and Delaware County to define roles and responsibilities, to make sure that we are at the table with you. We are not going to allow for you to do this by yourself. We'll be your partner in this, and I'm sure we'll be very successful in doing it. Secondly, the regional office approved approximately 300,000 acres to implement travel management in the North Middle Fork Smith watershed. That's our second project. We have a total of 6, by the way. And the focus of this work is decommissioning roads. And that work should be accomplished next year and into 2021. Here's the really big zinger for the day. We had a regional office person from engineering up here on the district a few weeks ago. And we were being told that the Forest Service regional office is strongly considering funding the remaining 4 travel management projects on the NRA, which would complete all of our work authorized under the travel management EIS. The additional funding would be well worth over $1 to $1.5 million. And once I have this confirmed, I'll let you know. But that is absolutely huge, considering that decision was signed just 2 years ago. And if we were to get all the funding on that, that would be a huge, really great thing for the district and for this community. Recreation. We are a national recreation area. And I'm working really hard to make sure the Smith River NRA is worthy of its name. I also recognize the role that we play in helping develop a tourism-driven economy in Delaware County. So I'll give you some highlights. We've had a good summer so far. Hiking trails. As you all know, I don't have a trail crew, so I count on my partners to improve our trail experience on the district. And we are having a very, very successful year accomplishing our trail work on the NRA, really the best in years. In the spring, we received a $10,000 grant to bring the Siskiyou Mountain Club, a great group, on for a 14-day hitch in the Siskiyou Wilderness to improve trail conditions. And they just completed their work and improved over 10 miles of the South Kelsey Trail from Harrington Lake all the way down to the South Kelsey Trailhead. And I had the pleasure of meeting them on the trail. It was a tough day for me, but I was impressed by the enthusiasm and the excitement that that young crew had on working in our wilderness. So this is a huge accomplishment, and these are the best trail conditions we've had on our most popular backcountry trail in a long time. In the fall, the Bigfoot Trail Alliance is another local group, is funded to support 10 CCC backcountry trail crew members to accomplish trail work in the Siskiyou Wilderness, most likely along the Gun Barrel Trail. The details on that are forthcoming. And of course, we have our friends with the Delaware Trail Alliance who are always out there when they can, volunteering on weekends and getting their work done, and they're hoping to accomplish about 5 miles of trail work this year. Mountain bike trails. Last year, I met with the Delaware County Chamber of Commerce and others, and they implored the district to improve mountain bike opportunities and access on the NRA, and I heard them. The district, with support from the Delaware Trail Alliance and many other stakeholders, including Delaware County and some of the supervisors here, recently submitted the Hurdy-Gurdy Mountain Bike Trail System Project. It's off the Big Flat Campground to the regional office for funding. It utilizes existing logging roads, mining trails, along with new trail to create a 10-plus mile mountain bike area. It fits very nicely with our existing recreational infrastructure, including the Big Flat Campground, the dispersed campgrounds around Hurdy-Gurdy Creek. So I just got a call this morning, so just a recent update on this. The regional office is really taking a hard look at this project. It is the priority project for the Six Rivers National Forest. My district is competing with other projects on the forest. But we are the top priority for the forest, and they're taking a hard look at this thing. And I want to thank folks, many in this room, who provided letters of support. Any additional letters of support would be welcome, because the more support that we show, that I have, the more likely we'll get that funded. But we should know by the end of the calendar year if we get funded on that. So that would be huge. And lastly, in terms of trails, you know, we have our new 2019 Visitors Guide, which includes a new section on our existing mountain bike trails with trail descriptions and maps. And I have a stack of them right there. Do you have your travel guide yet? I'm going to give that to you at the end of the presentation. And anyone else who wants some. So raising the profile of the NRA, you know, by aggressively pursuing these grants and building all these partnerships and getting out our story and getting involved in this community. The Smith River NRA has and will progressively become more competitive for funding, both internally and externally. And for example, because of the recent success we've had in 2018, the regional office just provided us another $100,000 to do our year work, so we can work on 2 veg management projects at the same time rather than 1. Typically, we've been working on 1 per year. Right now, we're working on 2. And I just said that's the Rowdy Divide and North Cape project. So that's good news. So I think some of this stuff is paying off. Also, with permission from the Washington office, I had to go that far. You know, I've begun writing articles for the Triplicate. We've had 2 published so far. There's been a change in ownership and management over there, but I will be meeting with the new editor or whomever that person is, and I will continue to write our articles in the Triplicate so I can get my story out to this community, because I feel it's a way of us being transparent. So lastly, strengthening and building partnerships. You know, all the work and success we've had recently, being applying and receiving grant money, our landscape scale restoration, travel management, to improving the recreational experience in NRA, are all because of our strong and growing partnerships. Through our work with the Smith River Collaborative, the Smith River Alliance, the county, the tribes, all those other partners, we're becoming more successful, more competitive, and building more consensus around the need to improve forest health in support of our local communities. We still have a long way to go, but we're making progress. And I especially want to thank Jerry and Heidi and her staff in supporting our efforts recently, especially with the NIFWIF Travel Management Grant. I look forward to working with you on that. Honestly, we can't be successful without your support, and I deeply appreciate the strong partnership we have with Delaware County. It is fire season, so I'm going to give you a quick fire update. It's been extremely quiet, and that's a good thing, right? And so we've had 1 confirmed fire on the district. Remember that lightning bust we had a couple of weeks ago? We had 1 holdover from that. No big deal, we put it out. Wildfires are down 90% in California as far as the amount of acreage burned this year compared to last year. But let's be clear, it is only August 27th. We're dealing right now with the hottest, driest temperatures we've had. We have east winds, and there's a possibility of lightning tomorrow night, where there's a system coming in, a tropical system that could potentially bring some dry lightning. But just know that we're ready and fully prepared to meet any challenge. 2 other things, RAC, Resource Advisory Committee. We're working very, very hard on soliciting and recruiting folks for that effort. And I want to thank Mr. Berkowitz, Mr. Hemmingson for applying. I don't know if you've applied yet, but you're on the docket for it anyway. So we do appreciate people applying. It's really important. And we have about $250,000 on the table that we'll be able to spend once that committee comes together. We should have those applications in by the end of September. So again, thank you for that. And one last bit of thanks. You know, I had called Supervisor Howard recently about some of the issues we're having with law enforcement, a lack of law enforcement on the Smith River NRA, and he asked me to reach out to the captain of CHP, California Highway Patrol, and we met with them, and they are currently patrolling the NRA and doing a great job for us in providing some law enforcement efforts in areas that we really needed. So thank you for that. So that's all I have. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this morning, and of course, I'm always available for questions, and I'll give you your guides now too.
Thank you. Gentlemen, any questions for Jeff?
Yeah, you're the person that
Comments,
does all this
questions?
Yeah, I just have a quick comment. You know, Jeff, you pretty well said it all. I don't need to elaborate on any of that, but thank you for your receptiveness to continuing these partnerships that I think are the force behind a way that we can help you getting recognition for the NRA. And I think you've done a great job of that, and I can't say enough about it. I'm going to make it short, but thanks. You know, I feel like you're invested in the community, and you're making, you're getting good mileage out of it, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Supervisor Howard?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely echo Supervisor Hemmingson's comments. You did say it all. It's clearly about partnerships. The visibility that you've brought to the NRA has been extremely important for us. Obviously, the vision around tourism, it's something that this community has looked for many, many decades. The achievements that you'll make in that progress, especially around mountain biking, cannot be understated. Your communication with us personally and individually has been exceptional. Absolutely encouraging that to continue to happen, and I know it will. And thanks for staying on top of that fire issue. I have a lot of faith that you're going to get it done if anything arises.
Absolutely. We're ready. Thank you.
Jeff, I always appreciate your reports. They're complete, informative, and sometimes entertaining. So tell us a little bit about the biomass project in partnership with Hambros. What's the likelihood of this? Is this looking like it's a possible maybe, and what's the economic impact? Will there be creation of jobs as a result of this? Could you speak a little bit more than what you delivered in your report?
So, you know, it'll be up to the Hamburg Group and David to decide if this is something they want to do. And it'll be ultimately up to them to decide the economic viability of this. But we are willing partners, and we have more than enough biomass available to provide him a market for that material. I would say, I don't want to score it, you know, maybe. I'd give it not a definite maybe, but maybe just a maybe. And I think it's a lot of it's going to depend on the meetings that he has with the logging contractors and how successful that is. And it really just comes down to the economic viability. But the need is there. We want it to happen. We're a strong partner in this if it was to happen. But it's going to really depend on those market forces to see if it kind of goes over the finish line. But we're trying.
Madam Chair, perhaps we could invite Hambros and Mr. Slagle to make a presentation to our board when he feels it's appropriate to complete this picture.
Jeff, I want to thank you for your interest in getting the Resource Advisory Committees going. It's been a long time.
It has been too long.
And, you know, I think we have like hundreds of thousands of dollars of projects that really need to be done. So the quicker the better that we can get these committees organized and get them functioning.
Yeah, like I said, we're getting very close to the required number of people. We had a really good effort at our last Smith River Collaborative meeting. Some folks from in that meeting stepped up, but we still need more people. If there's anyone in this room interested in being on the RAC, I'm going to stick around for a while. It would be awesome. And just to be clear, and I mentioned this at the last collaborative meeting, I know in the past that it's been a fairly laborious process to be involved in the RAC. But I have a vision on how we can be much more efficient as a RAC, because I'll be managing the RAC, to make sure that we can get those projects approved more quickly. And it really would not take up too much of your time. It would take some level of commitment, but not an excessive amount of time, because we'd make sure that it was a very efficient process. But I really appreciate those folks stepping up. I think it's going to happen. We're really close, and we should have all those applications into our Washington office again at the end of September. So, like $250,000 on the table, let's spend it.
Yeah.
Be crazy not to.
Thank you, Jeff, for
You're very
coming
welcome.
today and presenting to us, and I echo everything that my fellow supervisors say, and we really appreciate you and the job you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay. Yes, do you have a comment?
Hi, my name's Hugh Soul, and I wasn't going to speak today, so I'm totally unprepared. but I want to say thank you to Mr. Marzal, because I stumbled upon their biking and hiking trail up at Big Flat, where I had worked as a fireman for years, and I was blown away by the quality of it, because it goes from people who can do the extreme to people like me that are a little less extreme, and it was really, really nice. And then also on his fire reduction, I've been up Fox Ridge and I've seen what they've done, and it's amazing. I spent about 20 years as a fireman. I am blown away by how much you guys have actually removed, you know, and so that's all I wanted to say was thank you, because if you guys do as good of a job with the trails that you're doing right now, they were wide, you didn't take out too much, but you made it to where we could be safe up there. And so I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Hi, Eileen Cooper. I'm very excited and interested in the biofuels reduction and utilizing this resource for the community. I know that as we are, as the county, obligated to make a green waste reduction effort. It's also about bringing in as much fuels and getting shipped out of the county. We pay for shipping green waste out of this county, and then someone else makes products out of it. When we could have our own useful products here, and I appreciate the effort to start on that path. I think it would help the green waste throughout the community. And I know one big stumbling block was that at solid waste was that we didn't have a chipper, but the parks has a chipper in their big facilities. So I would broaden this whole conversation and really get everyone involved to making sure that this happens. They have a chip. We have a chipper in this community, and we could have a processing facility. So I also one thing that came up, I don't know if we've gotten anywhere with removing the goldfish out of this pond up near the north of Patrick's Creek area. It's should be filled with salamanders rather than goldfish eating salamander eggs. So I hope we're on top of, in general, the endangered species, the invasive species issue, because when you catch it at the beginning, it's manageable. And I don't know how far along we are in controlling some of those issues. And one other really good thing, and I wonder, that was mentioned in a collaborative meeting, was that we were going to plant Port Orford cedar trees that had root rot resistance. They found trees in the environment that had resistance, and they have been trying to breed these trees and plant them for restoration where damage has occurred. So I wonder if we've gotten around to doing that. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, at this time, we're going to move into our 1045 presentation with Hope Village. Matthew, you want to come up? And Matthew's from Rogue Retreat Development.
Thank you. So,
absolutely.
So, Madam Chair, members of the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors, we just want to thank you for inviting us here to present today. My name is Matthew Vorderstrass. I am the Development Director at Rogue Retreat. Rogue Retreat is a supportive housing and shelter provider for the homeless that is located over in Southern Oregon. And I want to...
Can everybody hear him? 'Cause I'm having...
Can you hear me? Okay, that's
I
better.
yeah, there you go.
All right.
Thanks.
I'll just talk into the microphone now. All right. So I wanted to start off the presentation with showing a video of Hope Village. And this video was actually done by a group out of Chico, California that came to visit us. That was as their community was working to develop a village. And so their community actually commissioned a local couple to go on a tour of tiny house villages around the Pacific Northwest and create a small documentary series on each village to help educate the Chico community. And this well-done video is a showcase of Hope Village, so we thought it would be appropriate to start off with that video with you guys here. So thank you.
This place is not like laziness. They are very strict. You gotta do your chores. You gotta do your gate watch. So there's no intruders in and out of there, and you gotta do your chores by keeping the place looking clean. Each one of us has a certain thing we have to do. And then myself and two others will check the job we're supposed to be doing. And once that's done, we check in, and then when a meeting comes, they want to know, well, how's the chores? We look at it, it's just fine, everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. And when everybody's doing everything right and tourists come in, the place looks clean, everything's fine where it's supposed to be.
As you notice, one thing about Hope Village is we intentionally try to make it this way is it's peaceful. It's just there's a serenity here that it just feels good to be here. There's just this feeling that this is a community, and it is. And it seems like when you have something nice, that the people who live here want to keep it nice. Now, what we also did was we wanted to have the option for the people here to learn how to garden. So we actually created a piece of the land out here that is a community garden. And for most of the people that are here, they haven't had that opportunity to have a garden. They don't even know how to garden. But they're learning. It's kind of exciting. I just talked to somebody a couple minutes ago. We still have some tomatoes down there. So they said, hey, we can put that in our tomato sauce tonight when we have spaghetti. And I said, yeah, that will kind of taste so great. So we're teaching them what to do with things like that.
It's good. When I first got here, I didn't know what to expect. And little by little, I started to get used to the place. The people are nicer, better, and then they started to help me out, and I started to feel better. I had my head up, and I talked and made friends here, and they also made me counselor.
What we provide is relationship-based case management, where the case managers are working with each individual to develop action plans that are unique to that specific individual. But within that structure, we have a 5-level system that we do to measure self-sufficiency. And so when people first come here, we're beginning to look at, do they have their ID, do they have their birth certificate, do they need these things? And making sure that they have the essential documentation that we all take for granted to be able to live their lives day in and day out. And then once we have those pieces met, then we begin looking at, okay, do they have addiction issues? Do they have mental health issues that need to be addressed? What's their credit score look like? What's their employability? And we begin looking at their the different barriers they might have and how we can begin addressing those. But each case plan, as we work through that 5-level system to getting somebody self-sufficient, is tailored to be specifically unique to that individual, because all of us are unique in our own way, and we all have our own barriers and we all have our own struggles.
This is a transitional program. This is for people that want to essentially reintegrate themselves, back to having an income, whether
whether it be a job or, collecting what they, through like disability, collecting an income, and getting back on their own feet.
When people first come here, their first 3 months they're here, they are paying $60 a month program fee for road retreat. $60 a month is pretty obtainable. And then after that 3 months, we then do a $100 increase on that, so it becomes $160 a month. And 50% of that increase then goes into a trust for that client. And so the reason why we did that is because the Hope Village is meant to be transitional, but we also are not interested in just warehousing people. We want to be able to move people along. So we had to create a process through that program fee that would make it a little bit uncomfortable from time to time, so that people would begin taking those next steps to beginning transitioning into something more permanent. One of the best things that we want to be able to do is we want to be able to provide that sense of hope and provide that sense of dignity. And so that's part of the vision of creating Hope Village, is that it's a place that provides people's dignity, because we're getting people when they're at their bottom. And from there, we want to be able to build them back up. And so providing a place that is aesthetically soothing, that they can be proud of. And that's all part of that ingredient, providing a place that's dignified, that they have a vested interest in seeing succeed, and creating this community dynamic where everybody is building each other up and making each other a better person as a result of it.
We try to be protective, help one another through and problems, all this and that, when it's a better community. So it's a good place to be. Should be something like this other places too, so they can be out the streets and get help.
The people at Hope Village did a great job of bringing to the council the types of people that would be living in these homes. People that just had a bad break. For so many people in Southern Oregon, the people are living paycheck to paycheck, and sometimes people lose that job for whatever reason. They don't have the savings to keep staying where they're staying, and they're just really good people that don't have anywhere else to go. So when they're bringing those people very emotional stories to the council, I mean, that really, I saw it myself. I saw some council members flip from being against it to saying, you know what, let's give it a shot.
This is something that every community could afford, from the fence to the grounds to the tiny houses themselves to the community structures that are shared areas with the kitchen and everything else. Our total property, we've invested just over $600,000 into.
Just in perspective, the average homeless person uses the emergency room 4 times a year. Now, if you know anything about emergency rooms, just to walk through the door is $1,000 probably. So they're probably going to spend $1,500 to $2,000 for each visit. So if you take that average person 4 times a year, they're going to spend maybe $8,000 in that year. And if we got them here in the village, they're not going to the emergency room. And they're putting their life back. And right now, as I mentioned earlier, over half the people are working, which means instead of taking from the community, now they're working and they're putting taxes back into the community. I think that's a win-win, don't you?
All right, and since obviously I spoke a lot during that video, I also would like to introduce our executive director and founder, Chad McComas, up here to be able to talk about Hope Village.
It's just really an honor to be here. And as I listened earlier, it sounds like homelessness might be a challenge here as well as up in our area. And what we're discovering across the West Coast is the housing crisis, and I imagine Del Norte County has a housing crisis like everybody else does. More and more people are becoming homeless, am I right? And so we have to find ways to be able to help some of these homeless people get back on their feet. You know, we often refer to homelessness as a person falling into a well. It doesn't matter how they get in that well, whether they were, negligent and got too close to the edge and fell in, or somebody gave them a push, or the economy made it crash down on them. Once they get in that well, we can't yell down and say, get a job or fix yourself. They can't. We have to give them that hand up so that they can then get back out on society and back doing what they need to do.
We would just love to be able to, I know we've had a group come from this area down to visit Hope Village. They got excited. We would love to be able to help anything down here get started if that's something you folks would, require or desire.
One thing that I think is important to add about Hope Village that we didn't necessarily talk too much about in the video is the success rate of Hope Village. When we were initially developing the concept and the model for what our village was going to be, we toured a lot of different villages across the state of Oregon and really kind of cherry-picked the best practices that we were able to find. And so a big part of what we did was we pulled the village model, which is really a model where the villagers are there day to day helping run the village, and we infused it with the supportive housing model that we had with our case management structure from our other existing programs. And as a result of that, Hope Village, we opened in October of 2017. That program itself is holding close to a 60% success rate of people successfully transitioning from homelessness and into something more permanent and not returning to homelessness. On average, currently people are staying with us for just over 4 months before they're transitioning to someplace a little bit more permanent. And so a lot of that has to do with the fact that we not only have the village model structure where the villagers are there helping to operate the village on a day-to-day basis, but we also always have case management staff on site and staff on site at Hope Village to be able to help support the villagers. And so that collaborative model has really created a stabilized community environment that has helped to move people forward.
Something that was mentioned in the video, and we say often, is that we're not interested in warehousing the homeless. When we looked at other villages across the country, sometimes they get a village built, they bring people in, and then they never leave, and they never move on, they never improve. That's not our goal. We are not interested in that. Housing Authority does that very well all over the country. They get people in housing and they just let them stay. We really think that people deserve to have their lives back. We actually try to teach people in our programming that they need to work on moving out of poverty and poverty mentality. Because there is this line that HUD has that if you make $1 more, you lose your housing support, you lose your food support. So people stay under that line intentionally so that they don't have to deal with life. But we teach them life begins above that line. And so we try to get people into jobs, try to get them thinking and dreaming again. In fact, we have had people in Hope Village that before they even leave this, they're making too much money to get any subsidizes outside, which is exciting to me. To see a couple move in with nothing and then to move out with 2 full-time jobs and cars and be able to take care of themselves is pretty exciting.
So, yeah, one of the things that I think is also important is the village itself is very basic. So we worked with the city of Medford to identify a location on city property that we could begin developing the village. And because the village is meant to be transitional in nature, it's still technically considered shelter. The tiny houses themselves are below any kind of building codes, and they're inside it actually measures 8 by 10. But the units themselves, they're insulated, the inside is finished, and they're well ventilated with windows, but we don't provide plumbing and we don't provide electricity. It's a roof over your head and a door that locks and a safe place to be. Then within the village, we provide centralized community centers that are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the villagers where they can go to access those amenities. And that's why it's meant to be transitional in nature. The idea with a program like this is you're setting it up to where you can take people directly off the street and help them stabilize. And once you're able to give somebody a roof over their head, a place where they can bathe, a place where they can store their food, all of a sudden they're out of crisis. And when we de-escalate somebody out of crisis, the other barriers that they might be dealing with, such as mental illness or addiction, those issues become easier to address, because I can tell you from experience it's impossible to do that while you're homeless. Nearly impossible. Somebody out there will prove me wrong. But it's hard. And so we're providing a safety net that can help rebuild people. And it's absolutely essential, I believe, to provide this low barrier way of getting people sheltered so that we can really begin the in-depth work to help push them forward and progress them towards whatever self-sufficiency looks like for them.
So we're pretty excited about trying to help other communities. At the beginning of this month in August, we had 40 mayors from cities across the state of Oregon come and visit Hope Village. And they're all looking for answers and what can be done in their communities. And it can be done. We can make a difference and address homelessness. It's not going to go away, as we have to work at it. thank you for your time and efforts, and if there's any questions you might have, we'd be glad to help.
Sure we do. Supervisors, any questions, comments?
Matthew, Chad, it was a very enlightening report, and I very much appreciate it. I have some bullet point subjects, and I appreciate if one or both of you can answer them. What's the cost of each one of these units? And it looks like it houses 2 people. I see 2 doors. What's the cost of each unit? 8 by 10, is that what it is?
Yes, so basically each one of those is a duplex, so there's a room on either side. Each room is 8 by 10, and at Hope Village we serve individuals and couples. Because of liability issues with the city, we agreed not to take anybody under 18 at that program. So currently each unit can house up to 4 people, let's say, each duplex for each side. And then depending on the community requirements, these units themselves in Medford, we were able to build for about $7,000 each. So each duplex costed about $14,000. We're currently working with the city of Grants Pass to develop a village there called Foundry Village. And those units, because the city's going to be having some additional requirements, would probably be increasing the cost a bit. But on average, we believe somewhere between 7,000 to 10,000 we could probably build.
Next bullet point, the maintenance of the units. They look pretty nice, pristine. I'm sure that's a challenge keeping it that way. So who takes care of, I would presume the people who are there take care of their own homes, is that correct?
Yes, and one of the things when we wanted to build this village, we wanted it to be something the community would be treasure and not go, oh boy, there's that village. Because we looked around at villages across the country, and some of them were just kind of haphazardly put together with recycled materials and things, and we wanted to have a village that looked really, really nice. And we even put a vinyl fence around it because we knew that the people living inside didn't want to be like they're in a homeless zoo and everybody's going to peek through the fence to see them, so we made sure they had privacy, and then it made the whole community a better place by having these. So we put a lot more money into the looks of the place. As far as maintaining it, there are rules that the folks have to maintain. We have a weekly inspection on every one of the units and see how they're doing. We're looking for things like hoarding. We're looking for things like, do they have food in there that they shouldn't have in there? Are they going to attract pests? We're looking to see if they're taking care of their units. We're trying to teach them pride, and they do take pride in the whole village. Some of the chores include picking up garbage, it includes weeds, just make the place look nice all the time. One of the things we find when we have these tours is people leave and say, this is not what I expected. The community thought it would be trash. There would be, drug deals in the parking lot. There would be people standing outside hoping to get in. As we said, I think in the video, we don't do services there for anybody except who lives there. So it's not a place you go to get food, people in the community, or get clothing. We don't even have people registered to get into the village at the village. They have to go to an office somewhere else. So we're trying to keep it as a gated community for the people who live there. And frankly, when people come to visit, they usually drive by twice before they find it. Because it just isn't, it's not what they're looking for. They're thinking, okay, where's the trashiest place in town? And they drive by it. And that's exciting. And I think that can be done in every community.
Yeah, you've answered a number of my questions in your retorts here. So are you at liberty to say the location of where this Hope Village is located, or is it something? Please tell us where it is. I'd like to look at it.
Hope Village is located at 728 West McAndrews in Medford, Oregon.
And
the city of Medford has a 20-acre site where they have all their facilities and trucks and gas stations and all that. We're right across the street from it. So they put us where they thought they could keep an eye on us. In fact, when we first put it in, the city required that we put $20,000 in a bank account just in case we really messed up and they had to come in and clean up after us. They were nervous. 6 months later, the chief of police and the city manager came back to us and said, you need to expand this. So we went back to city council, and we had to start with 14 houses, and we asked for 16 more, and they unanimously voted that we could expand. And they also gave us our $20,000 back, which was amazing. And they extended it. And so our chief folks that are supporting us are our city officials, and the chief of police especially. They've had less problems with Hope Village than a typical apartment complex in town.
Well, I just want to say and commend you both for coming here. It's a very encouraging opportunity you're putting before us, and I'll be interested to look it over. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us, and I just want to say that it's 107 degrees in Medford today, so anytime you want to invite me over, please do. So.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yeah, I had a couple of things here. I guess, first of all, you said $600,000 is what you had to come up with. Where did you get those funds? Where do those funds come from?
So that is actually total cost now, because we just finished up the expansion, is just over $650,000 for the total program. Yeah, it's a total of 30 houses, but the way that we were able to leverage that funding from the community was we had about $100,000 that came through our local community action agency from the state. We raised individual donations from the community. We also were very aggressive with grant writing and getting foundation support. So that $650,000 that it took to create Hope Village truly is a community investment, from individuals to foundations to government.
And a lot of faith-based organizations. We had many churches that would sponsor a house. So this house, that organization, this house, this church, and this house, this Kiwanis or whoever, Rotary, people got involved, and it really was fairly easy to raise the funds. I think the community, and I'm sure your community is just the same, people want to do something, they just don't know what. And they want to get behind something, but they're scared to know what that might be. And they don't want to throw money at something, but they want to have some answers. And we were able to put something together, and we'll give God the credit. We were able to do it in such a way that it's been successful.
And I got a couple more questions, but you said you had 30 houses?
Yes.
And are they all full? And do you have a waiting list?
Yes, they are all full, and we do have a waiting list for the program.
Okay, and then you said you had a 60% success rate. How do you define that, and how do you track it? How far back or how far forward do you track that, or back?
So that's a great question. So the way that we track success rate is we look at the overall program population of the people that have gone through, and then we track where they're transitioning to. So in many cases, some of the folks are transitioning from Hope Village into one of our other programs. In certain cases, they're transitioning into independent housing in the community, and in other cases, there might be a soft handoff that we do with a supportive housing provider at, let's say, a mental health organization. And so once we do that transition for that individual, no matter where they go, we then make sure to keep track of where they're going. So with the Oregon, in the state of Oregon, we do a 6-month follow-up and then a 1-year follow-up to track to see if somebody is still permanently housed after they exit the program. All that data is gathered by our local community action agency quarterly to submit back to the state. And then we're also now working with our local CCOs, which are coordinated care organizations that manage our local Medicaid dollars. And so because many of the homeless that we serve are people that are receiving Oregon Health Plan benefits, because of the social determinants of health, we are showing them overall health care costs. And so they're also working with us on long-term data tracking so that we can show the long-term global impact that supportive housing and shelter programs have. And so to answer your question, it's a lot of surveys and follow-up phone calls. And then we're also developing an aftercare program to help continue to provide case management support once somebody is independently housed and they might need some additional support.
And what kind of monthly or annual net costs do you have? You charge some money, and so there must be some costs involved. What kind of costs are involved to oversee and do that?
So, Chad, what is the operational cost of Hope Village each month?
It just went up, so I'm going to probably not get the right numbers, but it seems like it's around $11,000 a month to run Hope Village. That's to provide case management and utility expenses and some lease expenses and that type of thing.
Supervisor Howard, did you have a question?
Supervisor Hemmingson, the only one I had left that you didn't ask was, I'm very curious to see what role besides just planning and approval for the units did the city of Medford play in the establishment of this?
So some of this actually happened before I officially became a staff member, and so I'm going to defer this over to Chad.
It was a challenge, but we had some city council members that were real excited about doing something. They just didn't know what. And so they brought us to the table, and we we meshed this thing out over some time, and they had to be patient with us, we had to be patient with them. They provided some land, they provided their support, and that was a big deal because getting the city support then opened up the opportunity for foundation grants, and it also opened up the opportunity for some state funds. And once we got approval from City Council, then your private donors were willing to give. We had to have a place before they would actually give us the money. And that was okay, so it was a process. Today, they're thrilled. We're working with them maybe to create a second village. The state of Oregon has some ORS built around that, and we're trying to see if we can't get that adjusted. And there were some zoning issues, and you understand all that we had to go through.
Other than that initial piece that we just discussed, are they continuing to play a role other than to help secure another location potentially in the future?
Well, I think the big role that they play is cheerleader. When you have cheerleader, when the city is behind you,
Yep.
And then if there's any NIMBY issues, it gets
Sure.
kind of dwarfed a little bit. If the city's part of that NIMBY, we're in deep trouble. But the fact that they are believing in us and supporting us and even bringing all the mayors, it's an interesting thing. When we were talking the idea of a village, our local Chamber of Commerce wasn't really excited about it at all. And once we opened it, they took a tour, and after the end of the tour, they said, this isn't what we expected. And then the tour that we just had with all the city mayors from cities in Oregon was actually sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce. They rented a bus, and they brought them to us to say, folks, we're real proud of this. So we've made a complete turnaround, but I think it's success. And I think one of the issues is there's myths about the people that are homeless, like they're all lazy and they're no good and all these problems. And we just think, no, that's not true. They just need that hand up. And if we give them the opportunity, they really do shine. And you talked about follow-up. What we find is once they get a taste of a safe life and a good life, they have no intention of going backwards. They just find better jobs, and they want their own place, and they get really proud of who they are. We're actually doing a teleconference starting Thursday for anybody that's interested in building a village, and there might be people in this area who would like to get in on that teleconference. We'll have a 5-week training course, and we'll talk about all these issues and hopefully give people enough information they can create their own.
And I just have one other thing, if I could. Supervisor Howard, were you? How much actual acreage are you utilizing with your community kitchen and your community showers and all these, the village and the garden? How many actual acres are you using?
So I believe the total lot that we're on is just over 1 full acre, and so it's not a very big area that we're utilizing. And also, Supervisor Howard, just to add a little bit more to the last answer. One of the things I do know that the city did do when they worked with us, because they had no precedence for this, was we worked a lot with the city planning and then also the fire to make sure that everything that we were doing with the development of the tiny houses would make them comfortable. So we went as far as doing a firewall in between each of the duplexes. We have windows. We didn't go full egress because it would have took up the whole wall, but we have as big as possible so that if somebody needed to, they could escape. And then each unit also has a smoke detector and also a fire extinguisher. And then each duplex is at least 6 feet apart from each other. And so those were some of the basic requirements that we worked with the city to establish.
Great. Supervisor?
Thank you. One question here, basically two. What utilities are provided for each home?
Okay. So the homes themselves are very basic. So the homes are considered just shelter at this point. So they are insulated. They have windows for ventilation. But the tiny homes themselves, they don't have electricity. They don't have water, plumbing, or anything. And so the city basically looks at them as wooden tents. And so basically the whole idea is to create a structured environment that it gives people shelter, but then we provide community areas with those amenities that are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for villagers to access.
So when you get some inclement weather, maybe down to 25, 30 degrees, what's the temperature inside those homes?
You know, I don't think we track that. But, you know, people in the community get more concerned about it than the people living there. Because the people living there have been out on the ground and they've been living in their cars. And I'll get nervous when it gets cold. I'll go say, "You guys okay?" They said, "Hey, we're just happy to be here."
Okay.
And then what we find is about 3 or 4 months later, is thinking we could have something better, and that helps them move on as well.
So what are the dimensions of those?
8 by 10.
Now, Home Depot sells tough sheds, for
Mhm.
example, 10 by 12, for less than $2,000.
We've looked into that many, many times. They're not built as well as ours are. Ours are solid, and they're not insulated. That's a big deal. You have to have another wall inside plus the insulation, and you want to do it right. Yeah, plus firewalls. We looked at that. We've had a number of people that just go buy those, but they're just not as comfortable.
Okay.
Because it's amazing on a hot day like 107 today. Do we really want to go home?
No, they're not inside. They're working the garden.
Yeah, it's insulated, so it'll be probably 20 degrees cooler than that inside the shed. And then when it's cold, it'll probably be about 15 to 20 degrees warmer than it is outside.
Okay, thank you.
I think you've answered most of my questions, but I'm going to go through mine really quick.
Okay.
So developers, did you have a developer come in, a local developer there that you're working with, both on this one, Hope Village, and the one you're talking about in Grants Pass?
Is not necessarily an actual developer.
Okay.
For Hope Village, for example, we established a steering committee that was separate from our board of directors that kind of oversaw the development of Hope Village. And there was an individual that had a contracting background that helped us come up with the design and the layout for the village. And he then used his skills and expertise to help oversee that project. Okay. And then in Foundry, for Foundry Village, the village that we're helping develop in Grants Pass, a couple of the members of that steering committee also have construction backgrounds. So they're going to be helping oversee the project, but also donating their own expertise to the build of it.
So if we were to bring in a local contractor, they're counting on your funds that you put together to help them build?
Essentially.
Okay.
So basically, anytime that we're developing a village, we definitely have to work to get the resources in so that we can begin. Yeah, and for us, I think the key is the local steering committee. So for Hope Village, we had a steering committee that helped develop that in Medford. When we went into Grants Pass, because I don't live there, I'm not a member of that community, we formed a committee of members of that own community to help oversee that. That helps give that community ownership over the project, but also helps open doors for it.
Okay, and then management, you're bringing in services, are you using, I guess in my head, every time you're saying Oregon, I'm thinking California, because we all know California's a little bit tougher. I'm not saying we can't do it, but it's just a little bit different. I keep looking at Heather. So, like services, are you bringing in like our local, mental or health and stuff to come in and do the services? Is the government helping you in that way?
So in Oregon, that's where our contracts with the CCOs come in. So we are not a traditional behavioral health care provider. So we have worked out a way to be able to contract currently with our CCOs because of the impact that our work has on the social determinants of health. But also to also answer your question, we also act as a resource broker. So a big piece of what we do through our case management is we don't want to work in a silo and try to replicate everybody's services. So what we try to do is really build the partnerships within that community so that we can do those soft handoffs and really help create wraparound support for everybody.
What have been your community challenges? What would you say have been your biggest challenges? It seems like you've overcome them.
I think dealing with the myths of homelessness.
Right, okay.
I think that's probably the biggest issue. One of the statements that makes me chuckle sometimes is people say, we don't want to use our tax dollars to help the homeless. And I'm thinking, you don't really understand, you already are.
Right.
And if we can get get them out of homelessness, we're going to do much better than leaving them in homelessness.
Right.
And I'm sure California is no different than Oregon. It costs more to keep somebody on the streets than to get them off the streets.
It does. So the original $60 you started off, I think I heard you say 3 months? Was it 3 months? Okay, 60 for the first 3 months, then it goes up to 100, to 160, or just up to 100?
Up to 100, then goes 160. 3 months later, it goes to 260. Actually, we've increased it since that video to 75. So it's 75, 175. 3 months later, 275. 3 months later, 375. We cap it there. So by the time they get to that level, they're going to go, why am I here in this shed for 375 when I can get maybe a a room somewhere or I can rent an apartment. We're really trying to push them on all the time. Even the laundry facilities we have in the village are coin operated because we're trying to teach them it takes money to live. So if you have $5 and you want to go down and get a coffee at Dutch Bros, you guys have Dutch Bros here?
Yes.
You know, go down to Dutch Bros and buy a $4 cup of coffee, or I got to spend $4 on a load of laundry so I can have clean clothes. I guess I need to do my laundry. So we're teaching them all the time how to take care of themselves.
And I'm assuming they're getting assistance for that original rent in the beginning.
You know, most of the time homeless have a way of finding some money. But yes, the original one, sometimes they can get family or they get a church, but we really encourage them not to do that the second month. Let's figure out how we can, with the case management help, start getting some income for you. What do you need to do? If they're disabled, then are you getting disability? Are you on the list to get it? If you don't have your GED, you want to go back and get it. You want to get your education. You know, if you want a job, let's deal with what's keeping you from having a job. Oh, you don't have a birth certificate? Then you don't have ID, so we need to get that so you can at least apply for a job. Or are you on any of the housing opportunities? Are you signed up? So we have this 5-level program we work them through. In our area, we have a group called Consumer Credit Counseling. And there's probably something like that in this area.
The same thing.
Sure. And so, you know, we say part of our 5 levels is you're going to sit down with them, you're going to go over your credit scores, you're going to find out who you owe money to, what do you need to deal with, how can we get you so that you don't get 35% interest if you finally get a car, you get down to maybe 10% interest or 6% interest. How do we get your life back in order?
So you keep saying we. So is that a management group that's in there working with them?
Case
Is that
management.
Or the steering committee?
Case management.
So you have
So
a
when we're
management
working with them
group.
individually, we have case managers.
So where is that coming from and how is that being funded? So that's the government money that
We're
you're
getting
helping
government
use.
money
Okay.
through our local CCOs, which in Oregon, that's who has the Oregon health dollars that gets down to
Right.
counties, and so it gets put out. And they're discovering that if we help, our CCOs have tracked our participants. One of them did a survey about 3 years ago. They saved 60% on our participants. Once they got under one of our roofs, they saved that much on costs. The other one did one recently, and they found out that we saved 85% on emergency costs for the people we had under our roofs. So just that right there, they're saying this is cheaper to give it to you than to do it at that end.
Right. Okay. I think you got.
I'm sorry.
Jerry.
I just.
No, you know, sit on these, we're in meetings constantly.
What
so-
kind of numbers are we talking? You're serving the homeless in Medford?
In Jackson County currently, yes.
Jackson County, so you're countywide. So what is the homeless number? What are the homeless numbers in Jackson County?
It depends on what count you listen to. So if you go by the
Well,
point in
give me
time-
a count.
How about a point in time?
So,
We go by our point in time.
Point in
so-
time is right around 1,000 currently unsheltered in Jackson County. And then, but if you go off McKinney-Vento where you look at unsheltered youth, we're closer to 2,000.
Yeah. I just wanted an idea. And so then you're talking about one in Josephine County or
Yes.
Grants Pass. And so are you looking at are they looking at the same size village? Do they have the same number of homeless? How does that correlate with what you're providing? I mean,
So the number of homeless in Josephine County does have a little bit of a dip from Jackson County, but the size of the village that we're developing there is going to be about 15 tiny house units. Big part of the reason for that is the size of the space that we were able to acquire for the village, and then the other piece is that Grants Pass does just have a smaller community than Medford and Jackson County does. So we're trying to be a little bit more cognizant of knowing that starting off smaller with a village sometimes is better, so that you can really get a feel for what you need to do.
No, something else is coming. That's good.
No,
They're here. We
please.
brought them here.
Please
to
keep it
ask all
coming.
these questions. Yeah.
And I want to be respectful of your time, but you can call us anytime. We're left a brochure with all of our information in. And then also, if there's anybody that really wants to get more in depth, I'd say this teleconference on Thursday is really a big deal.
Right.
And we could get maybe somebody from your organization or the True North organization, and maybe we can help. We have no intention of taking over and doing something, but to help others.
Please.
We want to help others. We have really good people in every community that want to deal with this. I think given a little direction, they can get something going.
You just said it. It's direction, where everybody wants to do something. I've seen that over the last 6 months. We've been
Sure.
working with a group, and it's like, what can we do? And doing the little things that we can. And I see many, many faces in here that we've been meeting with regularly.
Well, we've made a lot of
And,
mistakes. You know,
And
and
we
we
wanna
learn
learn
from
from
them.
your
We learn
mistakes.
from our mistakes. And we're actually starting a full-time shelter in November in Medford, which we ran a part-time one for the last 3 years. Learned a lot of things not to do,
Right.
and the good things we need to do. And so from that, we can build a good shelter, and we're excited about that as well. And again, I think communities are anxious for something as long as it's well-run.
Right.
And it works.
Right, well, we appreciate your time and we appreciate you. Thank you for coming out. Okay, we're gonna move on. We have a couple more items left on the agenda. Do you want a quick comment? You want to do some public comment? Anybody who haven't, come on up, Eileen. We don't always.
Hello. Well, one of the areas that we were strongly considering putting this is in the city limits, and the county owns the property. So I would hope that you would come back to do a presentation for the city, because it would be their planning department, I believe, that would be handling it if we did choose the McCarthy Center area. And luckily, we don't have as extreme climate here as other places. So I don't know if we could save some costs of insulation. It's cool in the summers and it's cool in the winters, but it's not hot or cold. So, and I wonder also if local groups like Habitat for Humanity might reduce the construction costs and help out also. And I also noticed on our budget that you passed today, there was $302,000 for the past year for temporary housing to put people up in a hotel, an inn. Is that correct?
It is correct, yes.
Yes, and so wouldn't a place like this shelter reduce that burden? I don't know that much about it, but it seems to me that it might. So, thank you.
Thank you. You did. Anybody else? Mike, you want to come up and?
Real quick, Mike Tompkins, Crescent City. Thank you for taking this seriously and showing this interest. And I'm really impressed that you ask really hardball questions. That encourages me. And I really encourage you to move forward with this just as quickly as we can. And we'll be right there with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Pastor Pat Henderson. I'm the senior pastor of a local Christian church, Solid Rock Christian Fellowship. My assistant pastor, David Nadelborg's here with me. And we're here, I'm so grateful because my neighbor, Debbie, shared the information about Hope Village, a packet, and I read through everything in there. And just a couple of things, I was so encouraged. I just want to encourage you to keep pursuing it. I'm hoping we work with these people. I think it's a great idea. A couple of things they didn't mention, I was hoping they would mention. They have a thrift store in Medford, and it's really good quality stuff, barely used, and all the profits for that go towards the program. Also, they have a group of people they employ who, a lot of trash in the city, and we were talking about that earlier about a group of people, volunteers, to go pick up trash this week. And they have an employed paid, giving these people actual jobs where they go and pick up the trash in the city. And it was interesting because they were saying only about half of the trash in the city is from the homeless. The other half is from people, citizens throwing trash out. I thought that was interesting. But anyway, just a productive way to get people and give them an actual job and provide that job for them. And so we have that very problem we're addressing this week. This could be part of the answer. All I'm saying is I'm really hopeful, and it was like, we're looking for a direction too, as faith-based churches, praying for them all the time. We're driving to how do we minister to them? And this is a real need. So I just want to encourage the board to really consider this, and we're going to be praying that this happens. And I'm really impressed with these people and their presentations. So just like you, we're just beginning to learn about this, but I just want to encourage you to keep pursuing it. So thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to come up and comment? Okay, again, thank you, gentlemen, for coming all the way over out of the heat. Enjoy the sunshine and the cool breeze. Duh. And hopefully you will be talking with the city soon. I know I've spoken with the mayor and had this discussion with him, and we're hoping that you will be also talking with them, because we've been working hand in hand with the city on this issue, and the faith-based groups and the nonprofits. I've always said this is not a county problem, it's a community problem, and that's how it's going to be fixed. It's not going to be the five of us up there. It's going to be a group together working and having that desire to take care of it. So thank you again, appreciate it. Okay, moving on to item 14, approve and adopt a resolution amending the policies and procedures for providing general relief to indigent persons in Del Norte County as requested by the Director of Health and Human Services. But I see County Council.
Yeah.
Good morning, Joel.
Hi. The GR policy is something that we were here in April doing. This is a minor amendment that will let Heather release liens. When people borrow money, we put a lien on their property. All GR is highly confidential. Obviously, when you record something against somebody, it's necessarily public. So in the past, I think we've redacted that information. We came to the board to release the lien. What Heather would like is the delegated authority to release those liens without coming to the board. It'll still be public record, the liens, but there won't be the added exposure of coming here. If people wanted to go and find them, they could, but this gives one extra layer of protection. It also is just quicker. When the board delegates contractual authority, case law says there needs to be at least some safeguards to make sure you're not delegating too much. So the process that we've formulated is for the auditor to certify that the debt has been paid, and then it'll go to the Director of Health and Human Services, who will notify admin and then release the liens. So we've got a little bit of a check there just to make sure everybody's on the same page. And the whole resolution is before you again, but the only thing changed is some of that small language in there. So if there's any questions, I can answer those. And
Gentlemen, any questions?
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any public comment on item number 14? Seeing none, Kylie, could you please pull the vote?
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Cowan?
Yes. Okay, we're going to move on to item 15, approve and adopt budget transfer 06-46 in the amount of $208,641 within the fiscal year 18-19 probation department AB 109 budget as requested by the chief probation officer.
Move to approve.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any public comment on item number 15? Seeing none, Kylie?
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Chair Cowan?
Yes. At this time, legislative budget issues, I don't see anything else that we need to know about, Jay?
Nothing for board direction today.
Great, thank you. So we're going to adjourn. We're going to adjourn to our next meeting is on September 10th. Thank you all for coming out, and we'll see you next month.